And in France, more specifically, is very under stress, which means that, you know, high energy prices. This is a problem for the purchasing power, for competitiveness of companies, and all means as well. We're going to talk about the topics of safety of supply today. We are in a system in which it was reminded us by the three leaders of Total Energy, EDF and ENGIE. We are in a system where there is little margin for maneuver on the energy system. So in the short term, lots of tensions, and we evidence two topics which are essential for the energy system. The supply safety energy market and the notion of especially perfect storm. That's the short-term topic. Well, medium term, the crisis of the we should have war in Ukraine, notions, which creates tension on the gas of supply, the structural factor, which is the reduction of decarbonization issue, because another collective challenge is that power capacity the energy system contributes to the decarbonization availability, the lack of damaging of carbon neutrality in our economies, nuclear production units. So short-term kind of combination of factors which are ahead of the energy system in Europe and in France today, more specifically, we have very keynote speakers that you know, I will introduce briefly, then I will give them the floor. This is a problem for the purchasing power, for competitiveness of former Minister of Climate and the Environment from Poland, former President of COP24, safety of supply today, who is President of the EVDIS. It was reminded us by the three leaders, as you know, the Total Energy, distribution network, EDF and ENGIE. Electricity distribution network, because somewhat is not understood, little margin for maneuver, and Patrick POUYANNÉ, President of PD. So in the short term, lots of tension, and Michal, you have two topics which are essential for the energy system. Thank you, Claire. Thank you. Supply safety for using an English term, of course, which defines the short-term topic. Medium term, you're not actually lost in terms of language, but I will continue in French, hoping that safety of supply and so there is also the decarbonization issue, because another collective challenge is that heading towards the energy system very difficult winter decarbonization. There will be high damaging of exorbitant energy prices. Most likely there will be shortages of energy and energy cut-off. So it's easier to say it if we are not from the country, and if we're not from the politicians, and if we're not an active politician. So at the worst, there will be a combination, conjuncture of energy, economic, and in the worst case scenario, former President of military crisis as well. So clearly we are heading towards the perfect storm. So this is a major crisis that is looming network, and we have to understand the scope of such a crisis. And the scope of the crisis is to tell the truth, to tell the truth. CEO of Total Energy. Vis-à-vis what is to be expected. So, thank you, Claire. Thank you. There is not for using an English good solution for this crisis, which defines the solutions that will emerge in the panel. You're not actually lost in terms of language, but I will continue in French, hoping that it will be contradictory. Is what we have to do in long term. But anyway, we have to have this discourse. We will miss towards a great opportunity, very difficult to evolve. Because historically speaking, we can see that what exorbitant energy prices most likely, and there will be shortages of energy and energy cut-off. This is what was the case it's easier in 1973. Not from the country, ever since in the Netherlands, we don't heat their house, and if we're not an active politician, so at the worst, there will be a combination. You change of energy, there is a constraint. But back to the worst case scenario, the current situation, we are and military crisis total configuration of the European energy mix. So this is a major between the former paradigm looming away, and we have to understand the scope of such a crisis. And the scope of in many European countries, with the exception of France, based mainly on fossil fossil energy, including my country, which is a great example with 70% of coal-fired good solution for this crisis. But we're going towards a new system. The solutions that will emerge will be sometimes a bit contradictory. Short term is that which is close to a new form of utopia, contradictory what we have to do in long term. But anyway, proposed by our colleagues from Brussels, which would be a great opportunity renewable to evolve. Because historically speaking, the renewable are not constant. What wind, our societies evolve, do not the energy mix is the constraints over the year, you know. This is so what was the case that there will be shortage, constant shortage. Ever since in the Netherlands, in countries like mine, where winter are fairly harsh, 19, but now 18 and 17, and instead heat up the world. Change habits only if there is a constraint. You know, we need back to energy, transmission of energy. We need current situation. We are of energy. So we are in total configuration of the European energy mix. We are halfway between a former paradigm based on exchange. We are in network full work, the line A, B, C, in many European countries with exceptional full work, based mainly on fossil start and we said TGV energy, including my country, which is a great example. Configuration, what's the answer? 70% of coal-fired short-term power plant, but we're going towards a new system, which not just winter, it could be 2 to 3 years. A dream. So short-term, unfortunately, and I'm saying it which is close to sorry, form of because I'm bringing the COP24 short-term, proposed by our colleagues from Brussels, which would be get fully renewable model. Well, there is one problem is that the renewable are not the place. You got a coal-fired sun power do not function and all over the year, on April 15th. So either you accept that there will be shortage, kind of reaction, shortage, is short in countries like mine where winter tactically will be complicated, but we still otherwise, if we don't save the old system, it's going to be very complicated because there will be we need so what's going to happen we need in the medium and long term 10-15 years. So I think that this is a system that will be fully totally different. First, because would allow an example we need to have access to new energy resources, the line biogas, nuclear, geothermal are in full work. We can do that only at the local scale. And we said TGV won't work. What's most interesting is that the local dimension makes it possible to have storage, energy storage solutions. Not just electricity, but heat or cold for energy. And not just winter, with a central role played by the networks as well. Unfortunately, and I'm saying it with we will need to respond because I'm bringing to rethink the top-down diriges in France towards more decentralized, get smaller system with better energy efficiency, rebalancing of the energy assets. You got a coal-fired specific to territories, and we can associate of building, in building industry in this equation. So that's one solution. The second solution would be, which have been recommended for years, would be the rebirth of the nuclear line in Europe. Now, let's be mad. It's going to be crazy. Let's dream. We reopen the nuclear European nuclear domain. Medium and long term, 10-15 years. You maybe forgot that there is Germany next to you. It will be I know it. Totally different. First, Germany is fiercely against it. We need to have opportunity to shift new energy resources. Shift again that biogas, nuclear, geothermal. The crisis now is going to be a hell of a tsunami, and we'll have to change what's most interesting is that the local dimension makes it possible, and this is the perfect time to energy storage solutions. Not just electricity, but heat or coal. And therefore, I was in the Polish government for years. I was a minister, and I know what it means to be a minister facing such a situation. Huge difficulty to rethink solution. Which is easy solution for the minister to decentralized, smaller system with better energy efficiency. No problem. Rebalancing we're dealing with the energy assets. Which don't worry, we're here for you. Specific to territories. We solve everything and building. In the building industry. Some people are in this equation. That's one solution. The second solution would be which have been recommended for years. Good intention. Would be the rebirth of the nuclear increase of energy poverty. But let's be mad. let's be crazy, let's dream.
The crisis,
you know, we reopened the nuclear European nuclear
not just France, you know,
you're from Poland, we do exactly the same principle, the same instruments. If you hide the crisis under those instruments, it falls through. And if you allow me to paraphrase Churchill in Munich, you know, if it is the crisis, we can say it's going to be a hell of a tsunami, and we'll have to change the price or colossal debt. We shift the prices increase or the colossal debt makes it possible to compensate it for the most vulnerable population. If the government, Polish government for years, I was a minister, and I know what it means to be a minister facing such a situation. Huge difficulty, but this is a solution, the choice we face currently. Easy solution for the minister to say, let's talk truth. Do not allow the autocrats and the authoritarians to have a discourse of trust. Don't worry, we're here for you. Let's have faith in our democracy and the capacity of response from our people, and we face an unprecedented challenge. We don't have the solution. It's going to be complicated, but if we don't do it together, we will be lost. But if you think the crisis under public debt distributed through all forms of, not just France, you know, in Poland, we do exactly the same principle, the same instruments. If you hide the crisis under those instruments, it falls through. And if you allow me to paraphrase Churchill in Munich,
what you said, the role of electricity, the role of the
we can say, okay, the government have a choice of for exorbitant price or colossal debt.
To rebalance
either
the energy
the prices
mix.
increase or the colossal debt makes it possible to compensate it for the most vulnerable population.
For the last 30 years, from
if
COP
the
to
government
COP,
chooses
the global greenhouse
debt,
gas emissions,
it will have the debt,
even if we've all been mobilized to reduce them, have
exorbitant
increased.
prices. This is the choice we face
2021,
currently.
we got rid of
and
the
last point, you know, let's talk truth.
And carbon
do
is,
not allow the
coal
autocrats
is responsible
and the
for 40% of the increase across the world. If we look at energy in the widest sense of the term for 30 years,
it's progressed by and the capacity of response from our people, and we face the distribution between the different sources of energy is going to be complicated. But if we don't do it together, you know, we will be lost.
Fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas. Though the relative share has gone down by 1.3% in 30 years, and it's this share that was on the renewable side that went from 15% to 16.5% of the global energy mix. So yes, we have growth in renewable energies in terms of volumes, but their relative share in the energy mix stays very low. Networks and is shifting very little. And I won't go back to the specific context of Europe, the crisis in Ukraine, and rebalance the energy supply. But it does show that across the world today, climate change challenges, sovereignty issues, and the security of last 30 years from that we had perhaps forgotten in the last few years, they're now back in the foreground. Even if we've all been mobilized to reduce them, it's a relative inertia. And if we look at this in more detail, in 2021 we got inertia. There are things that have changed, in particular the development in coal is responsible for final consumption of energy of the share of energy in the widest sense of the term for 30 years. If we look at what the International Energy Agency says, if we look at the future increase in energy consumption, the distribution between the different sources of energy, the average in the world from electricity has gone from 13 to 20%, and we're already at 20%, coal, 25%, oil, gas, in our share of electricity, though the relative share has gone down by 1.3%. Moreover, we're lucky to have electricity that is decarbonized at 90%, which means that we emit 4 to 5 times less of the global energy mix per kilowatt hour of electricity than our European neighbors. And renewable energies in terms of volumes, but their relative share in the energy mix, the figures are quite telling. Stays very low. When we look at carbon neutrality in 2050, that is our objective of Europe, for the world. Ukraine and problems with supply, depending on the recent scenarios, we have to double the share of electricity in the end and the final consumption of energy. The final consumption will go down in the last few years. We're going to make huge back in the foreground energy efficiency efforts, minus 40% by 2050. But the relative share of electricity will go from 25% today that have changed, in particular the development in 2050. the final consumption of energy of the share of electricity
on the production
and
side.
That's good news.
And yes, Minister,
if we look at what the International Energy Agency says,
where we have
the future
energy,
is electricity
produced in a centralized manner.
When
Nuclear plants, thermal plants,
in the world,
hydraulic plants
from electricity has gone
big
from 13 to
20%, and we're already at 20%,
more and more
25%
decentralized
in
today
our share of electricity in French consumption.
in the Enedis distribution
Moreover,
network,
we're lucky to have
production
electricity that is decarbonized at
90%,
connected
which
to a
means
distribution
that we emit
network.
4 to 5
Otherwise, we wouldn't
times
be able
less
to
CO2
per
transport
kilowatt
the
hour of electricity than our
This
European
is also true
neighbors.
for electric vehicles.
You
The
mentioned Germany,
terminals, the charging
Minister.
terminals are connected
The
to the
figures
electrical
are quite
network,
telling.
and we have connected
When we look at carbon
550,000
neutrality in 2050, that is
renewable
our
production
objective
sites to our
for the
network,
world,
and we have to multiply this by 2 or 3.
depending on the recent scenarios,
1
we
to
have
2
to
million
double the
sites,
share of
that's what
electricity.
the French
programming
in
is
the
set
end
for
the final
2028.
consumption of energy. The
It's
final
already a
consumption will
colossal
go down.
change that is underway.
We're going to
but
make
we're going
huge
to have to
energy efficiency
accelerate.
efforts.
This is
minus
also true
40%
for
by
usages.
2050. But the relative
Today we
share
have
of
900,000
electricity
hybrid
will
and rechargeable
go
vehicles
from
and full electric
25%
vehicles
today to 55,
what the ADEME says
60%
for
maybe
2035.
in 2050.
The
This is a
year
huge
where we're
change,
banning
a change
internal
on
combustion
the
vehicles.
side. And yes, Minister, in France, we're
We'll
already
have to
in
be
a
at
mixed
several
model
million cars
where we
This is a
have
huge slope to climb.
energy,
particularly in
electricity
terms of
produced
investment in the
manner,
distribution
when
networks,
nuclear
and on the
plants,
NED
thermal
side,
plants,
we are
hydraulic
forecasting
plants,
the
big
that will
offshore
invest
wind farms,
61 billion
more and
by
more
2035,
decentralized
and
today
Eurelectric,
in the
electricity
distribution
network,
because the renewable
association on the European level has announced 400 billion
necessary
to invest in a distribution network.
by this
Otherwise,
period.
we wouldn't be able to.
So we have 10% of the network in Europe.
We're the
This
biggest,
is
and
also
we
true
have
for
4 to
electric
5
vehicles.
billion
The
annually
terminals,
to
the
invest.
charging terminals
This
are
energy
connected to the
transition
electrical
is
network,
underway,
and we have connected
we're not there completely, and I will conclude with the challenges that are involved.
Network, and
we
have to
require
multiply
investment.
This by 2 or 3.
The most intelligent,
1
the
to
best
2 million
investment
sites,
possible,
that's
but
what
the
means
French
that we
programming is set for
require
2028.
investment.
It's already a colossal change
has
that is
cost,
underway,
associated
but
costs,
we're
and
going
we
to
can't
have
hide
to
that.
accelerate
This
to
is
reach
also
our
true for
objectives in the most
usages.
intelligent manner. Today we have 900,000 hybrid and rechargeable
There's going to be
vehicles
a
and
challenge
full
in terms of
vehicles.
employment and skills.
What the ADEME
The
says
ecological
for
transition for the
2035,
electricity sector.
it already
The year where we're
employs,
banning
it already has 30,000
internal
companies of all
combustion
different
vehicles.
sizes, big ones, big suppliers,
We'll have
the
to be at
distribution
several
companies,
million
the
cars. This is
networks,
a huge
SMEs,
slope to climb.
and
Particularly in terms of
smaller
investment
companies
in the distribution
that have
networks and on the
600,000
NED
employees
side,
in
we
the
are
electrical
forecasting
sector
that will
building
invest 61
infrastructure
billion
that will
by
participate in this
2035.
revolution.
We need
and
the skills,
Eurelectric,
however,
the
in terms of
electricity number and
distribution,
quality, and we know that
association
industry on the
is,
European level has announced
under
400
tension.
billion necessary to invest in distribution
second challenge,
networks
our
by this collective
period.
capacity to implement
So we have
energy
10%
efficiency
of the network
minus
in Europe.
40%.
We're the biggest,
and we have
that's
4 to
a
5
huge amount.
billion annually
Particularly
to invest.
in the
This
context
energy
of an
transition
increasing
is
price of these
underway.
energies. The
We're
third
not
question
there
concerns
completely,
the
and I will
sustainability
conclude with
from
the
an
challenges
economic and
that
social
are involved.
standpoint
We require
of a
investment, inclusive
the most
transition,
transition.
the best investment possible. But
There was a
this
recent
means
Tribune
that of the 3
require
biggest electricity
investment
suppliers
in
who are
has
has
cost,
associated
we
costs,
have
and we can't hide that.
80 suppliers, the
3
3
of
of
them are much bigger than the others, and they published an article
manner
recently to call for
energy
there's going to
sobriety.
be
I don't
a
understand
challenge in terms of
the difference
employment
between
and
individual
skills.
and collective
The ecological
sobriety. Everyone has
transition
to
for the electricity
participate.
sector. Individuals with
It already
simple
employs
eco-gestures
in
it
a
already
global
has
vision
30,000
that has to
companies
be
of all different
a
sizes,
positive
big
sobriety.
ones, big
This is our
suppliers, the
third
distribution
challenge.
companies, the networks, SMEs.
I am optimistic
and,
about the future. I see that
smaller
behaviors
companies
are changing.
that have
I see this,
600,000 employees
at the local
in the
level
electrical
with the local
authorities,
sector,
with our partners, our
building
customers. There's a lot of
infrastructure
innovation,
that
a
will
lot of
participate in this
commitment,
revolution. We
a
need
lot
the
of
skills,
attention
however,
paid to
in terms
classic
of things
number
such
and
as
quality, and we
we
know
offer
that
as a free
industry
service,
is under
public
tension.
lighting.
Public lighting represents 30%
The second challenge
of
our
the electricity
collective
bill for
capacity to
municipality.
implement
What we can
energy
do today,
efficiency,
thanks to
minus
the
40%,
that's a
meter
huge
that
amount.
is rolled out in France, particularly in the context of an increase in their homes now, we can say to the local authorities concerns the areas of their lighting economic and social standpoint that are breaking down or that have already broken down or are over-consuming electricity. There was a recent 10 days later, but of the three biggest electricity at 8 o'clock in the morning when we calculate, we can give them that information. That's one example amongst many others. 80 suppliers, of the tangible three of them are much bigger than the others, and they published rebalance the energy mix to call for will lead energy sobriety. I don't understand towards the carbon neutrality in 2050. Everyone has and to just a word to conclude, individuals with we must not forget other countries in a global vision. We talked a lot about Europe. We talked a lot about France. But there are countries in the world where it's not sobriety that's the challenge. It's actually I am optimistic about the future, and we still have behaviors 800,000. I see this at the local level with the local who don't have access to electricity, customers, and there's a lot of innovation and a lot of commitment. Is not improving, a lot of attention paid to, in fact, getting worse because of the health crisis. We offer a lot of service, a lot of challenges, and I think we need to look at them all in a very lucid represents 30% of the electricity bill for a municipality. What we can do today, thanks to the linked meter that is rolled out in France. So Michel and Marianne have said a lot in their homes now. To comment. We can say to the local authorities, the areas I think that the current crisis you used rebalancing that are breaking down or that have already broken down or are rebalancing the electricity energy debate. Not 10 days later, the current crisis the morning reminds us that energy when we calculate, we can give them that information. That's one example amongst many others. It seems obvious that we can do today to rebalance the energy that's affordable, which will at a good price with more look at the current debate, and we want energy that is sustainable in 2050. And just a word to conclude is more ecological. And we talked a lot about the third Europe. We talked pillar. Michel, at the COP24. There are countries in the world where it's not sobriety. Put this forward in Glasgow 6 months ago. We were talking about the third pillar. The third pillar is the theoretical imperative. We know we have to save the planet. Citizens of the world who don't have access to electricity. Through the crisis that the two other pillars are now coming back to the foreground is not improving. In my experience in 25 years in the world of energy is that pillar 2 of the health crisis pillar. A lot of cost pillar, a lot of challenges, and I think we need to look at them all. Look at what's going on right now. The collective reaction that we have to this crisis. The energy debate. The second comment, when we talk about rebalancing the energy mix, have said a lot. We think that it's a supply problem as it's expressed. But we need theme, I think that the current rebalance energy demand also rebalancing the energy mix. We're not going to have reach this energy transition. I'm not saying energy debate. My producer's problem should be shifted to other people. Reminds us that energy what's being offered are based on three legs. We want available energy. It seems obvious today with less type of energy and not we want energy that's affordable. So we have to at a good price. Look at the current debate, and we want energy that is sustainable. The energy mix. And to do this, I signed with Catherine and Jean-Bernard an article that made a lot of noise, and we talked a lot about the third pillar. The three of us signed together in a deliberate way. We wanted to say, put this forward, and at Glasgow 6 months ago, we were talking about the third pillar. The third pillar is the theoretical imperative. We know we have to save the planet. The best way but we observe through the crisis that the two other pillars are now coming back to the foreground. The objective is my experience in 25 years on the world of energy is that pillar two, we can reconcile energy security by consuming less, guaranteeing our collective look at what's going on right now. We can also reconcile the collective reaction that by consuming less, and we can also have less the energy debate. The second comment, in all of our energy rebalancing the energy mix, people forget that before you talk about the energy mix and the content, all of these trajectories, but we need to plan that we rebalance, improve our energy efficiency by 2% a year. We're not going to reach this energy humanity is only doing 1%. My producer's problem should be shifted. And there's a real opportunity as people consume what's being offered. We move cars, when we're in a crisis, trains. We innovate when we're heading straight into the wall. I see this in my company all the time. Humans are capable of inventing things when they're dealing with a problem in March 2020. We have to COVID fell upon us. We felt the world was falling apart, but we found solutions. Catherine and Jean-Bernard an article that it made a lot of noise. I'm glad it made a lot of noise. That was conditions that no crisis scenario the three of us ever planned for. So we have the ability to react, and the call is there. Today, and we have a short-term topic that concerns purchasing power. The people listening to me here. So we're not asking people to give up on their way of living. They won't do that. But you all know that if you the objective is not to stop consuming, or if you adjust your water heater to 50 degrees, it's better than 60 degrees security by consuming less, guaranteeing our collective capacity. We can also reconcile purchasing power by consuming less, and you receive energy more than if you're washing at 40 degrees. There's so many in all of our energy transition trajectories. The house to 90 degrees. Before you talk about the energy mix and the content, like the Dutch all of these trajectories, but we would still plan that we should improve our energy efficiency. There are so many things we could do, and I'm completely convinced, and that was the aim of our article. Our citizens are prepared to make efforts, and there's a real collectively, and we'll do it more if we do it all together. We move when we're in a crisis against energy waste from the 1970s coming back, and as Michal said, if we change behaviors, humans are capable of inventing things. People have forgotten these reflexes, purging your radiators before the winter, you'll consume less. COVID fell upon us, we felt the world was falling apart, but we found solutions to keep relearn these gestures collectively, despite extraordinary conditions that no crisis scenario had ever planned for. So we have the ability to react. And the what's energy demand like on the planet? An American who consumes 200 people listening to me here. So we're not asking people to give up on their way of living. They won't do that. European 3.5. But you all know that if you solve an African, or if you adjust your water heater to 50 degrees, it's better than American. Degrees. So when we talk about rebalancing demand, your washing machine at 30 degrees, you're asking very deep questions about where efforts have to be made. And when our Western countries, more than if you're washing at 40 degrees, there's so many lines, and we've got heating, we've developed energy efficient methods, maybe not, but you have to take into account like the Dutch legitimate aspirations of the populations of emerging countries. And there are so many things we could do. And I'm completely convinced, and that was the aim of our article, our CO2 emissions have increased because the population is growing. And we'll do it more if we do it all together. Consuming 2 instead of 0.5 in this change in 20 years. Is it illegitimate that if we these populations have access to energy? No, it's a deep topic. People have forgotten these reflexes, take into account radiators before the winter. You'll consume less. About our own consumption. Things that we Americans have divided. We just have to relearn these gestures. 15 liters per 100. The balance and demand kilometers. We need to rethink things without changing our standard of living. The way we change energy demand like on the planet. Consumption. And Americans has brought this to the foreground. This is a good thing because we're solving a problem in the short term, and we're at European, medium and long term, which is Chinese joining this virtuous circle. An African, a journalist said it's unusual that energy companies say an American. We should be reducing energy consumption, but it's not unusual. Prices go up, it reduces demand, and it leads to bad behavior. It has to be made. And when our Western countries, yes, of course, we want our customers to be happy, like all industry lines, and we've got.
Last comment I want to make to rebalance the mix. Well, the word rebalance refers us to transition today in this discussion, which is highly emotional. We must realize that, in fact, we want to do too many things at the same time. We want the energy system is based, it could be a mistake, but good reason, on fossil fuels. While, oil and gas, why? Because they're the highest density, the cheapest one. Humanity always looked for the most efficient fossil. It was availability and cost.
15 liters
but
per
forgot
100
the durability of energy. That was discovered 25 years ago, roughly, when the climate change crisis raised our awareness. And in fact, we understood the crisis only in 2015, when all of a sudden there is a kind of a global mobilization. But now, there is this system.
The medium and long term, which
if we want to ensure the transition, we should take the next 10 years to build a new decarbonated world system. We don't have much of that right now. Our absolute priority is not just to stop fossil fuels to have no energy. That's unbearable. Lower your oil production, demand will adapt. No one to adapt is the price, not demand. Last comment I want to make to rebalance the mix. Will not adapt itself like that. The word rebalance refers us to transition today in this discussion, which is many emotional. We must realize that. In fact, we want to do too many things at the same time. We want the energy system is the renewable energy, but of biogas on fossil to invest in the system. And once we will have oil and when it will be able to represent the highest density, the cheapest one. About 30% in a global system, humanity always look for the most efficient. We'll start reducing the gas availability and cost. Otherwise, you know what happens is the durability of energy. I think the French government, by using the word planning, understood the planification and understood something. In order to do transition means that there must be a huge planification. We understood the crisis only in 2015. We need to organize the transition. Otherwise, I don't think that the market alone will do it. Simply because the players, if we want to ensure the transition, we should take the public policies to really have an new decarbonised we see the spectacular. We don't have much of that right now. The absolute priority is European policies on the European on electrical vehicles without the discussion on diesel, 2035 oil. But even if we change all the vehicles in the world, all of exactly what's going on. If all vehicles were to become electrical, 15% of the world production of oil. It's a lot, but and that's not acceptable for a transition. You'll have to find other innovation for the demand tomorrow morning to have this build the decarbonised industry to multiply by 10 that rebalancing implies the renewable energy, good planification, the energy discussion, to invest in this system. And once we will have more serene when it will be able to represent Michal and about 30% of the global system. It is complicated to do. It's not by pressing a knob, start reducing the gas. It's not the we should. Otherwise, you know what happens at this transition problem. I think the French government, by using the word planning, understood the planification and understood something all the time. In order to do transition means that there must be a huge planification effort. We need to organize the transition. Otherwise, I don't think that the market alone will do it, simply because the players we try to optimize. Thank you to the three of you. We need lots of public policies to really have an impact on our behaviors. We see the spectacular effect as a guideline is that of European policies on the European on the electrical vehicles. Without the discussion on diesel, the capability to turn this crisis into an opportunity. Even if we change all the vehicles in the world, by changing our behaviors were to become electrical, 15% of the world production of oil, that energy transition imposes us to reduce the consumption of energy to have this measure by about 40% between now and 2030. So we'll have to do it. To do it today, first, is a good way to control the invoice, and then we need to organize the transition. That was said by all the responsible speakers. The production means we start from a system which is fairly carbonated. It's not by pressing an external dependence. It's not the ability to organize a transition. Let's consider that consumers who are here, several usages, they want energy all the time, not too expensive, electrical energies, and as well, and this was mentioned, signaled, that a certain number of usages will remain gas and more e-mobility, industrial usage. Thank you to the three of you. Lots of converging points in what you said. Topic of biomethane and renewable hydrogen that will give us a decarbonated mix. So lots of common points, lots of convergence in we also have the capability to turn this crisis into an opportunity. Make this crisis an opportunity first by changing our behaviors. And I see Patrick gave us great examples. Concrete examples, but we all know that energy transition would like to bring imposes to reduce the consumption of energy. It was said by Marianne as well, by about 40% between now and 2030. So we'll have to do it. To do it today, of course, is a good way to control the invoice, and then we need to organize the transition. That was said by all the production capabilities of total and renewable energy. Start from a system which is fairly carbonated, and when we look in detail, we see there are a lot of production capabilities which are organize a transition by portfolios which already exist, especially in India, several usages, from what I've seen in your last publication. So my question is decarbonated electrical energies, and as well, and this was mentioned, signaled that a certain number of usages will remain in the net creation of e-mobility, industrial usage, electrical production capabilities in renewables in Europe and elsewhere. You didn't see it well, so topic of we don't buy and renewable existing facilities that are expensive. We don't have that much money, so what we're buying is simply pipelines which are being developed to accelerate the investment. We invest 4 billion in renewable energies, and once more, most of what we've done in terms of operations was to find developers who already have land, sometimes connections, and we use their financial means. We are net producers, and we had the opportunity to do one operation in India where there was already an existing portfolio, but most of the portfolio in question, which was just incipient, it was 5-7 gigawatts. They will do 30. So we financed the growth from 5 to 30 gigawatts of this Indian portfolio. Likewise in the US, not very active when it comes to buying existing assets. They're too expensive, especially for Total Energy. And in fact, our ambition is to have 35 gigawatts by between now and 2035. Most of the assets which have been bought with 10 out of 35, and after that 100 gigawatts. That's the strategy for economic reasons. In the net creation of electrical production capabilities in renewables in Europe and elsewhere. Energy and oil consultants. You didn't see questions to the three speakers. We don't buy first existing facilities. Should we really decarbonate economic activities to solve the climate crisis? Shouldn't we in fact intensify the implementation of to accelerate the investment? Carbon negative invest 4 billion in renewable energies, and once more, most of what we've done in terms of operations was to find developers who already have land, sometimes connections, and we use their financial means. We are net producers, and don't you think that we had the opportunity to do one operation in India where there was already an existing portfolio, but most of the portfolio in question, which was just incipient, it was 5-7 gigawatts. They will do 30. So we financed the growth from 5 to 30 gigawatts of this Indian portfolio. Likewise in the US, not very active when it comes to buying existing assets. They're too expensive, especially for Total Energy. And in fact, our ambition is to have 35 gigawatts by
Thank you for the questions, which are fairly technical.
Most of the assets which have been bought with 10 out of 35, and after that 100 gigawatts. That's the strategy for economic reasons.
I'm not mad about geological trapping of carbon to storage. There are limitations in everything, and I think it's not a universal solution. It's not as simple as that. The carbon sequestration
should we really decarbonate economic activities to solve the climate crisis? Shouldn't we intensify the implementation of naturally carbonated?
It is more useful to try to tackle the problem of the source, where there are technologies in industrial centers, when we can change the energies. I think the best carbon emissions are the ones we won't do. So, in my opinion, it's better to spend money by supporting the industrialists.
Don't you think that
there should be when there exist upstream tax policies for carbon? It's more complicated, but downstream industry we can do, others we penalize consumers. Carbon sequestration or trapping should be really limited to industries where we won't have a choice oil and not coal, so that they would have. We should develop it. I mean, to be neutral, there will always be oil consumption industry and residues, but let's not make it the total solution. To put a price on carbon chain is the best way.
Thank you for the questions,
which are fairly technical, but it's complicated at the end. So carbon price, but I didn't quite the first question. I think I'm not mad about geological trapping of carbon to storage. There are limitations in everything, and I think it's not a universal solution. It's not as simple as that. The carbon sequestration, it's better to be close to the North Sea, but not everywhere. It calls for expensive infrastructures, and we would store 15%, no more. So it is more useful to try to tackle the problem at the source, where there are technologies in industrial centers. So there's, when we can change the energies, I think the best carbon emissions are the ones we won't do. So, in my opinion, it's better to spend money by supporting the industrialists to rethink that when they exist. It's true for steel, it's not true for cement. It's more complicated, but industry we can do, others we can't. So carbon sequestration or trapping should be really limited to industries where we won't have a choice, but I'm not I'm not a fan. We should develop it. I mean, to be neutral, there will always be oil consumption, industry, and usages, but let's not make it the total solution. To put a price on carbon chain is the best way to send signals such that tractors will react, but it's complicated at the end, so transition the final customers to accept.
Vous avez évoqué la COP 27, moi la COP 24.
So about COP24, I went to see my professor, Jean Tirole, from the Toulouse school, who intelligently looks at carbon taxation as a solution that's imposed from an economic point of view, but economics doesn't rhyme with political economy. When you have 196 countries in front of you, that's the size. I found a consensus among the 196 countries. So it doesn't work. Yes, carbon taxation can work in some countries, but it has perverse effects immediately. It creates decisions between different countries, different products. You have to count from the beginning what is the share of steel that was used to produce such car in one country. The chassis was produced in one country and then taxed in another country. It's very complicated, and we're dealing with that right now. It's called Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. I've forgotten how you say it in French. In Europe, we'll innovate, we'll set up in our borders a type of carbon taxation, knowing that this will lead to effects that we can't imagine yet on world trade. The Chinese haven't looked at this saying, well, that's fabulous. We're applauding you. So we're talking politics now and in a debate for COP27. I'm in contact with my colleague who's the Minister of the Environment in Egypt, Yasmin Fouad. It's not the preoccupation of the Africans today, unfortunately, or happily, I don't know. We'll take another question. I'm looking for women who are asking questions. Hello, thank you for having stressed the need to rebalance demand through sobriety, but also through investments in heat pumps, for instance. And these investments have to be made in households and then in companies. And the question is the ability of households to finance heat pumps. Are there models where energy suppliers would finance these installations like the telecommunications? So I think we do this already. Marianne, we've set up loans that make it possible to finance households to make the initial investment. So I'm sure that it was set up 2 years ago. Do you want to add? I don't install or sell heat pumps, air ones, but we connect them, and this is developing because the thermal regulations are changing and forbids fuel boilers, so people have to move on to other sources of energy. And it's one of the changes in terms of usage. We talked about electric vehicles, but the way we heat and do and air condition are going through big changes. They're subsidized today, but in part by the state and by suppliers. I'll add a good practice from Poland. The equivalent on Total for gas, PGNigen, the Polish gas company, a big producer of gas. I introduced the possibility as a minister to have, there's an obligation on companies to reach energy efficiency through certificates, and companies can substitute this obligation by installing a heat pump at a customer's, and it really boosted demand. We can take 1 or 2 questions. there's a woman who would like to ask a question, I think that would be great. Or a student? Thank you for these very interesting interventions. So 2 words, technology and sobriety, come to mind. So a question, in your personal behavior, in your personal lives, what have you done to reduce your energy consumption and your CO2 production? Thank you for this question. We try to do things. We're counting a lot on young people. We know they're very committed, like Patrick does. I wash at 30 degrees, and I use the 800 RPM spin cycle. Yes, you have to go use all the good ideas. So spinning at 800 RPM, that's good. So we all have behavioral changes to make. You unplug appliances, you bring the heat down. You avoid air conditioning or overly air conditioning. You walk, take a bike, and we do it in our companies. Be convinced of that. Enedis has the #2 fleet of electric vehicles behind La Poste. What we do is, I talked about the Linky meter. Between the first one and today's, it's completely changed in terms of the composition, materials that are easy to recycle. We have a reuse platform in our company. The regional teams exchange materials in the end of life. So perhaps we don't do enough, and we're ready to do more, but we're already working hard. I heat to 19 degrees, and I ride an electric bike on the weekends. I'm Polish, so no, I'm laughing. What Patrick said about the different levels of consumption between countries, Poland has still not reached the European average in terms of energy consumption, particularly for electricity in France. We're at a ratio of 1 to 2. So welcome to Warsaw. We're very exemplary in terms of energy consumption and CO2 production. But I go to work on a bike. I was the only minister, to my knowledge, who would systematically go to work on a bicycle. And people thought that I was a bit strange. And I had a car that was offered to me. So it's a good practice I recommend. So, Mr. Casca, you talked about the renaissance of European nuclear. We have NG and Total Energies here. Enedis. Enedis doesn't belong to NG. We're independent. So nuclear, not in my backyard. I support it. We'll see the renewal of nuclear energy. It's decarbonated, but will allow us to work with renewables also. But not all. You can't do everything in a company, so it's not our company that will do it. So tonight I'm Cercle des Économistes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So a lot of ideas for the short and medium term.